I once jokingly said that the fight for marriage equality was going to save the economy because, I mean, how many times can gay and lesbian couples get married? I mean, every time is a reception, you have to register. Well, now that's all over. The United States Supreme Court has now said that we have a constitutional right to be married. But is the battle over? We ask our next guest, the always charming Kate Kendell. Welcome.
I am so happy to be here yet again. Thank you, David.
Again. I mean, but are we ever going to not need to have you here talking about why we still need to fight?
I hope not until after there are many more gray hairs that I can't cover up.
Yeah.
It's a very exciting time. I definitely think we've hit a high water mark. There's no doubt about that. To now have, and every time I think about it, it's really here, the freedom to marry nationwide.
Does it get you emotional sometimes? I still sometimes get
completely
teary.
I mean, for one thing, it happened and came so much faster than the trajectory even I, as an optimist, thought we were on. And the sense that it's gone off in many ways, no pun intended, without a hitch. I mean, obviously there have been a little some scuffles here and there, and there will be some ongoing skirmishes when legislatures go back into session. But in the main, most of our friends and neighbors, people in the community, really from coast to coast,
kind of went meh,
are saying, you know what, I have bigger issues that concern me than whether the couple down the street wants to make a lifetime commitment that is recognized with a marriage license.
I want to talk to you a little bit about you personally. I mean, you have been on the forefront for a long time. What was it like that day in D.C.? I mean, I remember watching it with my husband Alfredo on our TV and just kind of realizing you were watching in a historic moment and wanting to kind of be there. And I remember Alfredo came in and said, God, Kate must just be bursting with pride.
But you know what? I wasn't in D.C. I had the opportunity to be in D.C. and I said...
So I had that wrong.
I said, no, I want to be in San Francisco. Now, look, we had staff there because, of course, NCLR had one of the key cases before the Supreme Court. There were 4 cases before the Supreme Court. Our case in Tennessee was one of the key cases the court decided. But when it came down to, do you want to be in D.C. that day? I mean, I could have been there if I'd wanted to. I thought, you know, we've been through so much in California. In 2004, Mayor Newsom started issuing marriage licenses. We then, NCLR, led the lawsuit to win marriage in California. We won that in 2008. It's taken away in November of 2008, which was the worst day of my career. And then to win it back, the Prop 8 fight, the Prop 8 trial took place here. I just felt like, you know, I want to be in the place where so much has happened and that so much history leading up to it even being possible to win marriage happened in this town. So I got to be here. It was super exciting. Got to go down to City Hall. That morning itself, when the ruling came down, I was up early, showered, ready to go. I thought it was going to come down that day, that Friday morning, the 26th. So I'm ready with coffee before SCOTUS blog starts, all ready to go. And for us, it's 7 o'clock here on the West Coast. And when the first thing I saw on my computer was the marriage case, meaning they were just about to announce it, and then who authored so many amazing opinions for us, he would not be the author of an opinion in which we lost. So then I pretty much cried all day and have had moments, you know, even this very second, we're just reflecting on it and reflecting on how many people made so many sacrifices. And you know this as well as I do. People whose shoulders we stand on who didn't live to see this day.
You know, I want to ask you this not as a quote-unquote lesbian lawyer, but as a lawyer, how big is this? Not in gay history, but, you know, this is one of the cases that will be talked about along with Roe v. Wade, you know, Ferguson, what have you.
No, this is going to be, this is the sort of ruling, this is the sort of case that inspires young people to be lawyers. For me, it was, you know, I was a young person during some of the later civil rights cases. I was way too young. Brown versus Board of Education was obviously in the 60s. But some of the other cases, the skirmishes around protection for individuals who are accused of crimes, protection for individuals who are people of color around employment rights or gender discrimination. Those, I saw the Supreme Court as this body that was really there to protect the most oppressed, and was really inspired as a 13 or 14-year-old to be an attorney. And when Obergefell was handed down, the marriage ruling was handed down by the court, it was very clear to me that not only did it totally change the trajectory of where we were as a movement, even though we still have much to do, but it actually was going to inspire young people to feel like to believe that the court works again. The court does actually defend people who are dispossessed, and it does protect people who have been formally vilified.
You know, I was named for 2 attorneys, never became attorney. Sometimes I regret that. But the branch of government that's always fascinated me most was the Supreme Court, because I kind of believe that no matter what your political leanings are, by the time you get to wear one of those 9 robes, you have to think, I'm speaking for more than one presidential term. I'm speaking for history. How has this case affected, in your opinion, the people that weren't on our side? What happens now to the Clarence Thomases, the Alitos,
I think it's really interesting that I used to feel that way about the court, that it really was above partisan politics. And then after Bush v. Gore, where they essentially installed Bush as president, I took off my rose-colored glasses, and I realized that the court can be, in many ways, just as political as any other branch of government. I think they aspire to people for whom they have a personal prejudice or dislike for. So I think they are actually anathema. Their philosophy is anathema to what it means to be on the court. You put aside your personal likes and dislikes, and you make rulings that honor the language and the promise of the Constitution.
Whose personal story, if you read it, and I've read it, and kind of his personal journey, was it good that a Republican appointee wrote the opinion?
Oh, sure. And he submitted the author in the Windsor case that struck down the heart of DOMA, and now this is a perfect, I mean, his trifecta of cases, he really is like the gay Supreme Court justice. But I think what he was able to actually, he lives the ideals of the court. I'm sure he has not a tremendous level of comfort with LGBT people, but equal protection of the laws for him means equal protection for everyone, particularly groups that have been to a phone booth. The vast majority of clerks were issuing marriage licenses and doing their jobs, even if they had a religious belief that said gay relationships were sinful, or even if they didn't know or care for or like LGBT people. They were doing their jobs. And that was really the headline. So I think we're still going to see some skirmishes. We're involved in a case right now, well, several cases. One, a couple in Texas got married on Sunday. One of them fired on Monday. We're involved in a case in Florida. We're representing a lesbian couple, married, had a child. This is one of our plaintiff couples in our Florida marriage case. The state of Florida refuses to put both of them on the birth certificate. So we're going to see a number of issues like this. We still have a lot of family law work to do. Family protection and protection of our relationship with our children is not necessarily protected by marriage. The Mississippi governor was just quoted yesterday as saying there's nothing about their prohibition on gay couples adopting that is at all affected by the marriage ruling. So we are still going to see a tremendous amount of work to truly make the promise of equal protection real for the lives of LGBT people, whether it's a transgender young person or a poor LGBT person who can't get a job because of their sexual orientation. That is still perfectly legal in this country. Yes, we can marry, but marriage is only one part of how we express our civic lives. We need jobs. We need to be able to afford good education. We need to live in a decent neighborhood. We need to be able to protect our kids. We need to be able to see our partner in the hospital. So all of those things are still in place. Oh, good point.
You know, oh, we're done.
Yeah, I was.
Oh my God, Kate's dialing for dollars again for some gay fundraiser. I mean,
what could this possibly be?
What can this possibly be to do now?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I was thinking more about people objecting to it, and I think that's a blip in the frying pan. I do worry a little bit that people think because marriage was such a headline and then we won that, well, we must be finished. But I actually think when most LGBT people, particularly I'm thinking the donors to NCLR and hopefully every other LGBT organization, reflects on their own lives, they'll recognize that, yes, their ability to marry the person that they love and have that marriage sanctioned by the state is enormously important, but it's only a small part of how they live. Everything else that we need in terms of embrace of our communities, in terms of family acceptance of young people, you know, just combating the violence against transgender women of color, for example. I mean, it is still lethal to be an openly queer or transgender person in this country. And until we change that, we can't declare mission accomplished.
I've got just a couple more questions.
Oh, that's
I mean, they live with this every day, but I mean, you know, on a personal level, what was it like that day?
Well, I think, you know, my kids have always been so hopeful. Movement forward, and then there's a setback. Movement forward, and then, but eventually, you know, that arc of moral history bends towards justice.
Eventually bends towards justice.
And so I do think they've always had a sense that even with setbacks, we're going to win. So I feel like our daughter, who's 13, was totally nonplussed. I mean, her reaction was sort of like, yeah, so, you know, like, well, what else? I want them to say it's the law of the land, and it should be the law of the land, and I support it. And if that is not what that candidate says, they should not be getting the support of LGBT people. I think that's the most we're going to get from the Republicans at this point, and it's really too bad. I do not consider myself, my entire life growing up, very partisan, but, you know, we are in a situation now where, yeah.
Great. Well, we'll talk to you again, I'm sure, when something else comes up, which always will.
Anytime, David.
Always a pleasure, Kate. Thank you. Next up, our conversation with Kathy Amendola, someone who knows the Castro, where many LGBT heroes and heroines have walked the walk on our behalf. No one knows it better than Kathy. Our conversation with her coming up next.
Hi, this is Steven Tyler, and I love California life.
Hey, I'm Christina Perry, and I love California life.
We love California life.
Hi, I'm Joe Buck, and I love California life.
Hi, I'm Nick Barrios, fashion designer. You may know me from Project Runway, and you're watching California Life.
It's National meets Regional. It's Sidewalks Entertainment. Join us for a new path to arts and entertainment. Catch us daily on Comcast Hometown Network, Channel 104.
On maps, it's still called Eureka Valley. Some people call it the gay Main Street. What am I talking about? Well, the zip code 94114, the Castro. And our next guest knows that area better than anybody. Welcome, Kathy Amendola of Cruising the Castro Tours. How you doing?
Thanks, David. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
You know, I have to tell you, I get the biggest kick walking through the Castro and seeing you leading one of your tours.
Yeah.
What is it like kind of being the head mistress of the Castro?
Head mistress, ooh. It's so exciting. It's such an, people don't realize how much history and culture, and obviously it's sexual diversity there, that they just think it's just a wonderful place to go party in and go eat and drink, but there's so much history. And what's empowering is sharing this history and actually hearing people's history. So it's a wonderful tapestry of just people who are involved and getting involved in the community and learning more about LGBT rights.
Now, talk to me about how long you have run the Cruising the Castro Tours and how you got to be in San Francisco and take over this historic enterprise.
Actually, I never planned to be here, but I had a change in lifestyle and I needed a community. So that's when I moved from Maui to San Francisco. And Trevor Haley had started this tour back in '89. So when she retired, I had bought the business and continued on leading tours. So I have a professional background of tourism, actually, tour and travel.
So you came out on Maui and came here. Was that what happened?
Yes, I did.
Everyone thinks I think of Maui as the most relaxing place, but you escaped not to Hawaii, but from Hawaii.
Exactly. So it's a very healing place, and it really made me come to terms with it. It's more human and civil rights issues than anything. But the most amazing thing in the world that's happening now is that it is becoming awareness of people realizing how many people are diverse, and it is indeed human rights issues now. So very exciting time. It's a very exciting time.
So where do your tour members come from?
They come from internationally, domestically, local people in the neighborhood. People, again, don't realize how much history, and actually Harvey Milk had created this community that it's very strong and very politically proud, and it's just incredible to really go deeper into it.
You know,
Twin Peaks, and sharing that he and his partner were together 40 years, and they're from Sacramento, and how the neighborhood's not the same. I advised him that people look different now, okay? It doesn't mean that they're not sexually diverse. They look more mainstream. And I told him you can't judge a book by its cover, because there's so much bisexuality, pansexuality, in addition to homosexuality.
Right.
So the spectrum is really vast, and it's incredible.
You know, I know one of the things you're involved in, we both are the Rainbow Honor Walk,
Yes.
which is a wonderful addition to the Castro, if I do say so. How have having those 20 plaques
Yes.
impacted the neighborhood and also your tours?
Again, raising so much history about LGBT people who have made impacts in history. The Rainbow Honor Walk has been a great addition to the tour because people are realizing, oh my gosh, I know Frida Kahlo. I didn't know she was bisexual.
Right.
James Baldwin, so many, Del Martin. It's just incredible. Actually, some of the names that have been selected are from my tour members. Alan Turing, he actually took maybe Harvey Milk's spot. I mean, it was such an incredible person who had made such a contribution to society, the Enigma Code in World War II, and the fact that modern-day, father of modern-day computer science. So amazing people who have done that.
Now, I know you're in the middle now of looking at the next 20 honorees.
Yes.
What is it like, I want to say debating, but talking about who are going to be the next people listed? What is that like for you?
It's very exciting because, and it's also, we're presented with hundreds of names. So it's really sometimes a difficult task in all coming into agreement that only these 20 people will be on the list next, when there's hundreds or thousands of people. We have to work with a criteria, and that's what's really kind of keeping us focused. And it's challenging, but we got a great board, so it works really well.
Right. Of the 20 names on the Rainbow Honor Walk, do you have a favorite, or is that a bad question?
No, not at all. I have several favorites, but one person that I do stop and talk about with a lot of heart and passion is Del Martin. And you know, not have taken
because up until, what was it, 1976, the American Psychiatric Association said that homosexuality was a sickness, a disease.
Absolutely, actually till about the 72 or so. And then the Daughters of Bilitis got that overturned. So we have so much to thank for these two women who put years behind this, and they could have been arrested, killed, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's very humbling that Phyllis unveiled Del's plaque.
Yeah, Del is no longer with us.
Correct.
But her widow, Phyllis, is now in her 90s.
That's
lives
right.
just a couple blocks away from her wife's plaque.
Exactly. So it's very endearing to talk about that.
We've just got a few moments left, but I want to make sure we talk about something that's coming up next for you, which is a specific tour for the Castro.
Yes.
Talk about that.
The Castro Food and Wine Tour is now being unveiled, and basically the tea community and pairing wine with these amazing types of food.
So now it's not going to be a history walk, it's going to be walk the walk and have a fine wine as well.
Exactly, I'm offering two tours. That's right. So basically we have an historical walking tour, and then I'm offering the food and wine tours in addition.
Great. Well, once it gets going, I look forward to having you back on the show talking about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David.
We've been speaking to Kate.